Light changes things. Even simple things we're confronted with every day. There's beauty in the changes light brings about. There are so many interesting things to see in a day. There's never any reason to get bored with your surroundings, whether you're in an office building or on a farm. You have to work at seeing. It must be an aggressive act of visual curiosity. Things are always changing, so you have to learn to see things as they are right now. Combinations and relationships of form, colors, textures, and lines. When you try to see things this way, no matter where you are, you can be rewarded with moments of unexpected joy during the day.
Reinhold Marxhausen, artist, teacher, and a man who celebrates the light of each new day as the light of new human awareness. To Marxhausen, each daybreak brings a promise that the changing light of the sun in its track will reveal new ways of seeing nature and everyday objects, new ways of seeing himself and others.
By seeing, you come to know that everything is real. Everything is something. When you believe that, you begin making every day an event, a new life, and a time to see. This is a kitchen window in my house in Seward, Nebraska. My wife has little objects in the window. And here you can see some glass bottles. Now, in the morning, my neighbor's house is dark and the edges of the bottle are light. And here my neighbor's house is light and the edges of the bottle are dark. It's evening. Now, it's the same bottles and everything's the same except the time of day and the atmospheric conditions. I've taken about 20 slides of these little bottles sitting in a window, and no two slides are alike. They're different because the light changes, and the atmosphere changes, and the sun changes. And sometimes they look very dramatic, and sometimes they look very undramatic. And when the sun comes booming into this kitchen in the morning, everything has a strong, powerful shadow, and it's very dramatic. And so as I get up in the morning and come to this little space, I can see things differently as it's reflected in the objects. Today shouldn't be just another day, and today is different than yesterday. And every day can be a wonderful chance to see new things in new ways. You know, I think the sun enjoys changing things. There's a little playful little attitude going on between the sun and these simple little objects in this kitchen.
Light changes things, and to recognize this is to take a first step towards seeing in a new way, a way that can transform a bread wrapper into a piece of sculpture, or a bread basket in the sun into a basket of light, its contents spilling over into a pattern of dark grids. When Marxhausen is photographing in his kitchen gallery, everything that casts a shadow is a lesson in changes.
This is a little metal cabinet with 3 metal handles. Now, these handles don't look the same every morning. In one particular morning, they look like this. Another morning, they look like this. And another morning, like this. Here are 2 plastic buckets on our back porch. And this particular morning, they were smiling. We can all take a look at our kitchens at different times of the day and see things in a new way. And maybe we have to squint our eyes down and look at things very closely like this bowl and cup of coffee over here, and look at the interesting shadows. Or this cup with a long shadow. Or this fork with an interesting distorted shadow. We're getting to see colors, lines, shapes, and patterns the same way we'd look at painting or sculpture. We're seeing that distortion isn't just changes in shape that the artist does, but that there's distortion in nature, and distortion is part of reality. And that shadows are very much part of objects. And sometimes distorted shadows might be much more interesting than the object itself.
This is Concordia College, a Lutheran school. It's in Seward, just a few blocks away from Marxhausen's home. He began teaching in the art department here in 1951. His work reflects a love of light. So does his method of teaching. Marxhausen's art classes meet outdoors when the sun's out, and students are more often told how to see than how to draw.
I try to get my students to get right down to seeing. Seeing frees you. You become free to respond to things not just because of the biases you have or what the teacher tells you or what your friends say, but really seeing honestly and truthfully is sometimes better than knowing what you're doing. You can have so much information about something you really don't see it. In art, if you see a hand truthfully, you should be able to draw it. Students want to know, how do you draw a hand? Well, you just draw the lumps and the lines, and there it is. You don't ask, how do you draw a hand? When we look at things, we really see too much. We see everything from all the way from here to here. We see all of this. It's really too much. And so this is a little device where we can block out all of that stuff and just see fragments. Just like when you take a picture with a camera, you're looking through the camera and you see this little scene, this little part of nature. And so you can take these little pieces of paper and we'll cut a little hole in this piece of paper like this, tear it out like this, and that becomes a kind of a viewfinder, see? And we can hold that up, you can stretch your arms out or pull your arms close to you, and you can begin to see different things in different sections of the trees. And now instead of seeing the whole tree, we just see part of the tree. We just see some of the leaves, the lights and the darks, and the branches coming through, just a section of the building. And if I can hold up to your face, just a section of your face, just your eye or just your nose. Move it up close to your head. Begin to see combinations of lines, thick lines and thin lines. Look at interesting combination of colors. And see the trees in front of the building. Begin to look at shapes. And if you get this thing up real close to the tree, instead of seeing the tree, we just see the bark, the interesting texture of the bark.
This is Swede Goner's farm, just off the highway south of Seward. There are still a few animals here, but Swede Goner is gone. The house is empty, the barn is empty, and the farm is no longer operating. But it's important to Reinhold Marxhausen. In 1969, Marxhausen and a group of art students put their creative talents to work for 2 months to make the old farm the site of an art happening. Junked farm machinery became sculpture. Binders twined from the mangers became weavings. The barn became a gallery. And the people of the small Nebraska community were invited to see Swede Goner's farm through the eyes of artists. For Marxhausen, Swede Goner's farm is where seeing became not only a community venture, but a philosophy of art to be practiced and shared.
You know, this is not a special place. It's just an ordinary barn, and it's not a picturesque place at all. And that's why seeing interesting things in a place like this is really tough work, and seeing has to be an aggressive act. You will want to look for things that are interesting up close, and the different textures, and how it looks at different times of the day, and begin to establish a vocabulary on how to see. Having this project out here gave us a chance to see, or forced us to see, interesting things in a place that wasn't that interesting. And it gave us a chance to see things from different points of view, and to see things here from a very unbiased point of view. Now, take a look at this fence. It's not just a fence, it's a special fence with its own character. Just look at this little knothole here, and the beautiful color and the little diamond shapes that it has. And you can see some very geometric lines in this windmill, especially if you change your point of view and look straight up from the bottom. You can see the geometry of the thick lines and the thin lines, and there are some little wires sticking out on the side that are kind of a nice contrast to the geometry of the straight lines. We tend to see things like this barn from a distance and say, that's a red barn. But when you move in real close like this, it's not a red barn. Now it's a combination of boards with colors and textures and lines. That open door is very dramatic because it's a dark red against a very gray color with a black square. It's a combination of squares, really. Now, that's very dramatic. But these doors are not dramatic because the colors are all very uniform. A close-up of this door latch with the peeling paint would show some texture, and that really intrigues me. That's really kind of neat, that little thing here. Now let's look at this window. Just an ordinary window that's been painted over, and it doesn't look like very much. But it might look different from a different point of view. Just look at this window from the inside. It's much more beautiful than the outside. And this piece of glass right here is as beautiful as any stained glass window in any cathedral anywhere in the world. I think accidents are God-given opportunities for us to see things in a new way, to reevaluate and to look beyond our biases and prejudices. This slide looks like a Japanese watercolor, with all the nice, soft, subtle colors. But it's really a watering tank in a feedlot, and this is where the knees of the cattle rubbed against the metal. Now, this says something about accidents. A cow getting a drink of water is not an artist, but the result of this accident is really very handsome. And this metal is really better looking now than it was when it was new. Many painters would be very envious of what the cows achieved. And so sometimes accidents can be just as beautiful as things created by nature or by artists. This too is an accident. Although it was done by a painter, he was a house painter. The brush fell out of his hand and landed on an old screen door, and the paint splattered, and this is what happened. A very handsome series of lines. Sometimes accidents give us a chance to break through our biases. Here's another accident that resulted in a cracked car windshield. And from the outside, most of the lines you see are white. But seen from the inside, the lines are black. Now, if there were two people looking at this crack, one seeing it from the inside and one seeing it from the outside, they would describe it differently. The person on the outside says the cracks in the glass are white, and the person on the inside says, you're wrong, they're black. But they're both right. They're looking at the same thing from two different points of view. Now, this window says a lot about tolerating other people's experiences and their points of view. And while these two people are arguing about the colors of the window, maybe they don't realize that there might be a third point of view. And this is the same windshield with a setting sun behind it, and it looks altogether different. The function of art is to get people to see things in a new way. I remember that morning of that event. I came out here to put the paintings on the walls of this barn gallery, and my wife made 4 hard-boiled eggs for me in case I got hungry. I could eat them during the day. And so I came into this gallery, took off my coat, and threw it on the ground, put the eggs on the jacket. And then the people started to come, and they were all dressed in their Sunday clothes. And 3 little old ladies came and stepped into the barn, and they were excited. They looked at the paintings, and they said, "Look at this watercolor over here, and look at this oil painting over here, and look at these eggs over here." And that's the way the whole day went. People were looking at all kinds of things, and they didn't know what was nature and what was art. This farm gave a lot of people a chance to see things in a new way.
After the Swede-Goner Farm project, Bankers Life Nebraska, a life insurance company and member of the Business Committee for the Arts, invited Marxhausen to share a seeing expedition with employees in the home office in Lincoln. Equipped with a camera and a point of view, Marxhausen roamed the building and photographed every line, color, form, and texture that interested him, anywhere he found it. Later, home office employees selected the pictures they liked best, and blow-ups were hung in the lobby as a permanent exhibit.
I took the slides in the Bankers Life Nebraska home office building to identify things that change every day. And one of the things that changes in the building is the way that people hang their coats in the coat rack. Let's say people came to work and there was a blue coat next to a purple coat next to an orange coat. Now that's a variable, the different colors. Another change in the building is the way the light comes in through the curtains. It comes in different ways during different times of the day. Let's say we're here in the morning. Well, the light comes in through the windows and casts very dramatic shadows on the floor or the furniture. But maybe in the afternoon it doesn't shine at all in this particular place. Maybe it shines somewhere else. So there are several variables. I thought the extension cord on telephones was very interesting. A lot of shiny surfaces caught my eye, like a water fountain and other shiny things. As you walk by and wear different clothes every day, you see different things in the reflection. Seeing the way objects change help you appreciate change in other ways too, like the changes of nature. Change is all around us, especially in nature.
Change is all around us, and in nature's endless cycle, Marxhausen sees change as an optimistic promise of a new life every day. He sees it as a gift.
Red flowers are very easy to like, but no one seems to get very excited about flowers when they're just becoming flowers. Change is something we're afraid of. We fight change in society, religion, and all kinds of areas. But change is really what life is about. Dandelions open up one petal at a time and change in a very subtle way. Even though this flower is not yet a flower, we can enjoy the change. We can enjoy the miracle of how a flower becomes a flower, just like a magician does it. These were flowers, but now the petals are dropping to the ground to become part of the soil. This is another miracle. These turn into fruits or seeds. It's really beautiful because it's part of the change in nature. Change in nature, when we take the time to see it, gives us a constant opportunity to see ourselves in a new way. People who like tomatoes like ripe red tomatoes. If you like tomatoes, this is a very nice picture to look at. But the fact is, tomatoes are green longer than they are red. Tomatoes are red for only about 2 days, and then people eat them. Somehow, people have a hard time looking at green tomatoes, but we don't always have to judge things or see things through our biases. We can just look. See things the way they are and just leave it at that. These are tomatoes too, but you don't have to eat them, just look at them, at their forms, their shapes, lines, and textures. If I said these were solid gold, would you like it better? Sure, these are old tomatoes, but there's something very pleasant about them to me. We should accept change in nature and begin to see things just the way they are. Red tomatoes are no better than green tomatoes, and green tomatoes are no better than red tomatoes. They're both interesting. We try so hard to look young when we're old. When we're old, and there can be beauty in change. Even the mountains used to be flat. Everything in nature changes. People often ask me, why don't you take pictures of people? Well, it's harder to see lines and textures and colors in people, and so I take pictures of inanimate objects and hope that people will make a transfer from seeing objects to seeing things in people. Recently, I showed my slides on how to see to a group of elderly people at a retreat center in Nebraska. And after the show was over with and I was putting my projector back into the box, an elderly woman came up to me, and she had 1,000,000 lines in her face. And she said, I have a nephew who takes pictures. And one day he was taking my portrait, and I was sitting in the kitchen drinking a bottle of beer, and he took a picture of me, and he enlarged it, and he showed me the picture. And I looked at the picture, and I said, that's ugly. And then she looked at me and said, do you think he takes pictures like you do? And I looked in her face and saw all those lines, and I said, those lines are part of you. That's the way you are. And those lines are beautiful. And she smiled a little bit and said, you know, I think I hurt my nephew's feelings. And tonight, I'll write him a letter. That was maybe the first time this woman ever really got to see herself truthfully and honestly. And that must have been a wonderful letter. And seeing truthfully can really free a person. And if that's what seeing can do, then I think that's neat.